Este episodio es presentado por the Bannon Law Group LLC. Gracias por apoyar nuestra misión. Hello everyone and welcome to today's episode of Yo Soy the Boss. With us tonight, Meredith Bannon from the Bannon Law Group. Meredith, thank you so much for being with us tonight, for saying yes without hesitation.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I've lived in the Bluffton area for the last 16 years, married to my law partner, and we have one daughter who's 12.
Wow, amazing. So you've been in the area for a while, and you practice mainly, it's real estate?
Yes, I do real estate closings, and I represent homeowners associations as well. And then my husband represents criminal defendants.
Okay. Full disclosure, I love your law group. I love what you do. I love your entire team. Mostly everyone knows I am a realtor. And so the way that you actually treat, my clients and the service that you provide, and the fact that you have bilingual staff is amazing. And one of the things that I'm very grateful is the fact also that you allow me to interpret and communicate, with my clients. Most of my clients are only Spanish speaking. So again, thank you. And we are going to be talking a little, or we're going to start with real estate because it's a very important topic and now quite relevant with our Hispanic community. More and more, they've learned that they can be homeowners. Can you tell us a little bit about the process of homeownership within the Hispanic community?
Sure. I think the biggest step is just realizing that it is possible for you to be a homeowner and that there are different programs out there and there are different ways of financing. So you don't necessarily have to have all the cash to purchase. And once you explore your funding opportunities, I think that's really where your odyssey of real estate begins.
Yeah.
And there are opportunities of financing. We still have some USDA loans. If you're out in Jasper County or in a more rural area, you can get these government-backed loans that offer down payment assistance or very little to no down payment, which is really good.
Do you know if that also applies to someone who is not of legal status, but has a tax ID, and that's how they're able to get, or obtain a loan? But do you know if they could also qualify for this sort of assistance? Or
I believe so. I believe that most of the federally backed loans are just looking that you do have legal status of some sort in the state. So if you have an EIN, you don't have to be a citizen. But if you are of questionable status, that's when you would look to cash or a private investor. You do see a lot of sellers who are willing to finance and work with the purchaser.
Sure.
And I think those are still options. That it's just because you don't have legal status here doesn't mean that you can't own property and you can't buy property in the U.S.
Okay. I'm going to back up a little and ask you, what is the function of an attorney when it comes to real estate representation?
More often than not, it's to scare people. But really what we do is we act on the client's behalf in South Carolina. If you're a seller, you get your own attorney, and if you're a buyer, you get your own attorney. So the attorney represents that sole role in the transaction. So if I represent a buyer, I'm going to work with the realtor, make sure the terms of the contract are fulfilled and all of our timelines are met. I'm going to search the title just to make sure that the seller does own it free and clear, and that when you purchase it, you're going to own the whole thing. Then we work on creating the settlement statements and collecting all the money and making sure everyone gets paid in the transaction.
Yeah, and that's one of the questions that I get a whole lot from my clients. It's like, why do I need an attorney? Whether it's a buyer or a seller, more often from the buyer for some reason. And whenever you are explaining, when they go through the entire process, and even before, many of them may not know that they can actually obtain your services or reach out to you before they even sign a purchase contract or an offer. Is that common? What is more common in your office, to actually receive the contracts already signed and say, I have a client who likes to be represented by your office, or do most of your clients actually reach out to you first and, talk to you before or get advice from you before they even either hire a realtor or reach out to a realtor to, put a contract or an offer?
It really depends where they're from. If they are used to how we do it down here in South Carolina, then the first time I interact with them is after their realtor has signed everything, negotiated everything. But if they're from New York, they're very, very doubtful of us, and they're used to the process in New York, which requires an attorney at the beginning. And so they will reach out to me at the beginning.
And I think that's probably what would be better for someone to do. Yes.
I think it's your comfort level. If it's your second, third, fifth time buying a house, you're like, I know this better than you. This is fine.
Yeah.
But especially first time homeowners, I really like working with them because it's such a process of educating and letting them know that it will be okay, that we have them covered, that I really enjoy. And so I view my responsibility beginning before the contract, so they know everything that's going to come up and they aren't surprised by anything.
Yeah, yeah. Including even, like I said, as you're explaining the documents when they're signing, what I've noticed is you actually let them know the type of loan that they're requiring. I just had a customer recently saying, I want to purchase my second home, but I don't even know what type of loan I used for my first one. And that surprised me, entirely. So those are first-time home buyers, but let's say those who are now in the second or third investment property. Can you tell us what is the best way to actually purchase an investment property that they're trying to, lease or something? How can they protect themselves against, lawsuits and coming to them personally?
The way I view it is, everyone wants to protect their house, your primary residence. You want to make sure no matter what happens with my business dealings, my home is protected. And so when you start acquiring secondary and other investment properties, you want to make sure that you have the right legal protections. And the biggest would be putting those into an LLC.
Oh, yeah.
A limited liability company. They're very easy to set up in the state of South Carolina. You just go online, you fill out a one-page form. And it's basically creating a separate legal entity that will hold the property. And so let's say you rent it out and your tenant falls down the stairs and breaks their arm. They're going to sue you. And you don't want them to come for your house.
Right.
And so with the LLC, they can only reach the assets of the LLC, and all your other investments are protected.
Yeah.
And so that to me is a very important vehicle to have in place, especially when you're doing sophisticated investing like we're talking about. And another benefit is that you can sell your interest in the LLCs without having to record the transfer with the county. And so if you want to bring on partners or you want to sell the business or the assets of the LLC, you can do that and it's more protected.
Wow, quite interesting. Is that something that you would be able to do for them, creating the LLCs and basically guide them through the entire process?
That is something we do, yes.
Yeah.
Because we view it as serving the whole client, and that is a service that goes hand in hand with business and real estate.
Yeah. Let's just say they start getting, they've had one or two and now they're ready to continue. would you suggest creating different LLCs for each property, or just one? What do you think would be the best way to go?
Your CPA will tell you to do one umbrella LLC like you're talking about and just put all the properties in it. Your lawyer will tell you to do one per property because that is the best way to limit your liability. That way, let's say you have a condo on Hilton Head and a renter falls down, breaks their neck. They can't come after the farmland you have in Ridgeland as an asset. Whereas if it's owned by the same LLC, they could go after those assets.
Well, and now you guys know. So, there's no reason why you wouldn't come to, in this case, Meredith in her office to actually get advice and do it right from the beginning, because it only takes one incident to, affect you. And if you don't have like that entity, that LLC in place, it can come after you personally. When it comes to, I'm sorry. It's like my mind just went blank for a moment.
You're like, the LLC is so interesting that.
Well, it is, because there is so much information to go with that. And again, I am a little familiar just from the investment part of it, but I would have never thought of like the different type of LLCs per property. And as I hear you, I mean, it makes sense, anything else that you can share with us when it comes to purchasing property? For example, a lot of my clients are of non-legal status. And with that, with the loans, like you said, those hard lenders, the down payment is much higher. Property taxes are higher. Because everyone sees those type of loans as have higher risk. If the person, for one reason or another, gets deported, what happens to that property? If they had family here, great. If not, like, have you seen any of those incidents where what happens to the property? How can they prepare for something like that?
Well, that's what's interesting is, so regardless of your status, you can own property. So let's say you decide just to leave the States, or you are forced to leave the States, you will still own that property and you're still responsible for the legal obligations. So as long as you keep paying your taxes, you will own that property forever. You can deed it to your great grandkids and say, we own some property in South Carolina. And I think that if that is your situation, you do need to be a little bit more cautious in your preparation. It's important to be prepared, especially if I have clients who have children who were born here and are citizens. And, a lot of times they will view buying this property as an investment and a savings for their kids in the future. Right. And so I strongly encourage getting powers of attorney in place. Even healthcare power of attorney. If it's important to you that your body is sent back to your home country, if it's important that you have a certain process in place, I don't think anyone wants to think of it, especially when you have so many other things going on in daily life, but it's important, and it doesn't take that much money or time to get it in place. The power of attorney is huge. It would allow someone who remains here to enroll your kids in school, to get them benefits, to take them to the doctor, make healthcare decisions. The things that distance just doesn't allow you to do. Yeah. And then there's that way, if something happens, there's no time lag. You know that your family's covered and you know your kids are covered. And it's just a really important planning vehicle to have.
And of course, that is something that you would also, as long as you know that is the situation. A lot of times we shy away from actually being truthful, or just, letting the attorney know the situation as it is. And so in that sense, you cannot advise them the proper way because they don't share that type of information. Why do you think, they shy away from, giving you their legal status?
Well, I think a lot of it is the different roles of lawyers. Like in Latin American countries, lawyers do different functions than the lawyers in the U.S.
Yeah.
And, in the U.S., if you retain a lawyer, whatever you say to that lawyer is privileged, which means I can't tell anybody, which I do think is an added layer. But if you don't grow up with that as this is something that is sacrosanct and this is what happens, and I know that it won't be tested, I know it won't go away, I think that there's just a healthy skepticism with it. And I think that that's why it's important to build trust in the community and have real conversations. And some of it is a leap of faith of, I need to do this just to make sure my kids are safe, my wife's safe, that we have this covered. And you're buying thousands of dollars worth of assets in land, and you can't lose your land. So you want to protect your investment.
And that's the key, is you don't lose it, but you have to be able to protect it from the very beginning. And so, like you said, it's building trust, and that's one of the reasons that I again want to thank you for being here, because this is the way to build it. Is being able to share that information, communicate it, and to know that is the reality of things, and all they need to do is just that, communicate, come to a professional, and who better than to advise you and assist you the best way possible based on your situation.
Well, and one thing with our law firm that we strive is to be very relatable, of that you aren't intimidated. We don't have big law books in our office. We, it's very approachable.
It is.
We try to make it comfortable, and we try to simplify complicated processes so everyone gets it and is on board with it and understands each step of the process. And so that's something that I really like to emphasize, is that, we're real, we live here, it's daily life. So let's talk about daily life problems.
Is that the reason that you have in your staff Spanish-speaking personnel? Is that important to you? I feel that that you are relatable, that you see or seem relatable to the community. And I say that and emphasize on that because, as far as I know, your office is the only office who have paralegals who are bilingual, and that is, I appreciate it. That I know.
That blows my mind.
That I know. I get a lot of calls from colleagues. Hey, do you know of a lender who, speaks Spanish? An attorney? Does anyone know of an attorney who speaks Spanish or have Spanish-speaking personnel? And it's always you that I name.
Well, we're really lucky that we do have the bilingual staff, and it is an asset to us. We feel that the Hispanic community is a big part of the Bluffton community. I think that the amount of money and effort and just pure cultural enrichment that the Hispanic community offers to our area, to not have services and to exclude that whole group from being able to talk openly about asset protection and acquisition and everything, I think it's a huge disservice, and we're really open to it.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, and things are changing, but it is amazing how we have grown. We were talking about earlier, I've been here for over 30 years. Back when in elementary, in middle, and even high school, I was probably the only Hispanic, in the school. And now we have grown so much. I believe it's 46% of our students in Beaufort County and Jasper County. They're like 30 to 40 something percent are Hispanics. And that just in itself, blew my mind as well. I knew that we had been growing, but
to have that much representation is huge. And it's funny, I always joke with my staff that the poor bilingual kids always do terrible in Spanish in school. We always laugh. I'm like, how's the grades? How are the grades? And they're like, oh. I'm like, I know. But I do think that there's also an emphasis in the broader community of, you know, it's important for our kids. You know, I didn't have the opportunity to be bilingual. And I often wish that I have. I've studied Spanish. I try, and Lord knows I sound like the whitest person ever speaking it.
Come on.
But, you know, my daughter started studying Spanish in 4th grade.
Wow.
You know, and like she'll come home and I'm like, that's actually a pretty good accent, you know?
Cool.
So I do think that there's a broader acceptance and more embracing
Yeah. Well,
of it.
well, that's good.
And I mean, look at our festivals now. Like, we have multiple Hispanic festivals in the area. And just today I was driving around Bluffton and looking at all the new restaurants and stores and the grocery stores that we have, like the Hispanic grocery stores. And I was just like, this is awesome.
Yeah. And then, you know, really, I don't know if you like to cook a whole lot, but now you can find ingredients of all sorts in, you know, all around Bluffton. And that's great. That's great.
We lived in Arizona for a couple years before we moved here. And I love Mexican food. We got addicted to Sonoran Mexican food.
Yeah.
And phenomenal tortillas. And finally, we have like real tortilla places that you can go and buy them hot and fresh. And it's slowly creeping into the South, which is something I'm very excited, because before we'd have to go to Atlanta.
Yes, that's true. But I may need to teach you how to make this. They're pretty easy. Pretty cool. Pretty cool too.
Pretty
You're
cool.
like, yeah, but I'd rather just get them already made.
Kind of. But it's fun though to make it yourself. And
Yeah, it is. I'm going to switch a little now towards criminal law, which, you know, unfortunately, and it impacts the entire community, but our Hispanic community, you know, a lot as well. Right now, with the fear of getting, you know, pulled over for one reason or another. As I mentioned, I have a 21-year-old, I have a 17-year-old. And even though we try to tell them, if you get, first of all, don't speed. Don't. We want you back at home. But if you were to get pulled over, you know, do this, do that. But what are the do's and don'ts?
Be respectful. You know, I think most people default to be respectful. But, you know, I've gotten pulled over several times.
Yes, I think we all have.
I might have a problem with the lead foot, but allegedly. But, you know, you have that adrenaline pumping through you. You're going through the worst case scenarios, and you're like, who's going to pick up my kid from daycare? Who's doing this?
Yeah.
So the biggest to me is stay in the moment and listen actively to what the officer is asking you and telling you. And it can be difficult with a language barrier.
Yeah.
But a lot of our law enforcement, especially here in Beaufort, is former Marines, and a lot do speak Spanish.
Yeah.
And so just be patient and be kind, and, you know, tell them I don't speak English if that's an issue. Because I feel like a lot of misunderstandings and escalation happens when
because of the lack of understanding and communication.
Exactly. You know, and there are things that you can do. Make sure your car is registered. You have active plates, that you have a driver's license. If, you know, my husband and I have a rule, if we drink more than 2 drinks, we don't drive.
Okay.
It's just not worth it. It's not worth the hassle. We have Ubers. It's much easier now.
There's all kinds of options now.
And so I think that if you can take steps to mitigate and limit the possibility of your interaction, if you can avoid it, that's going to be the best. You know, and so a lot of it is situational awareness of, if you have had a couple of drinks, you know, maybe consider whether or not you want to give the roadside test. Consider whether or not you want to give the blows. And there are consequences to not doing it, but
so let's just say, you know, if you know that you have really not had a drink, you may have been speeding. There has to be a reason why you got pulled over, right? You must have given a reason. But besides that, you know, you're everything is good, everything is, in order. But you do come across someone, an officer who is not very nice, let's just say it. And they ask you, yes, do a test or get out of the vehicle, or I need to search your vehicle. What do we do then? What do we advise them to do? What do we, each individual, not so much our kids, but like.
Well, it's funny because my friends laugh at me when I get pulled over. I say, hey, how you doing? Here's my license. And then, the cop's like, hey, you really blew through the stop sign back there? Or, he asks some question intending for you to respond in some way. And I immediately say, with all due respect, I'm not answering any of your questions, and please call my attorney. Okay. And it's so funny because he's like, lady, I'm just saying hi to you. Uh-huh. But it's really important to be leery of your interactions. And, human nature is we want them to like us. We want to go along and get along. Like, sure, you can search my car. Sure, you can do this. I know I'm fine. I view it in a different way of this is the state asking to come in and search this. So what right do they have to do that? Somebody off the street, I'm not going to let them come and ruffle through my house. Yeah. Same thing. Why would I let the state come and search through my car? And there's literally nothing they can do if you say no. They can, if they have probable cause, they can get a search warrant and search your car, and that's fine. That is one of their rights, but there's no reason to make it easy on them to do that.
And like you said, as long as also you are respectful, you don't need to allow things, but also don't lose that respect that they owe. I mean, being a law enforcement officer, I mean, I know I couldn't do it. Mm-hmm. And so I have great respect for that profession.
Immense respect.
And that's what I try to teach, our kids as well. It's like, teachers, officers, military members, we owe them the service. I don't expect teachers to raise my kids, but when you're not at home, they are the authority.
Exactly. And, but, you have to have a healthy distrust, not disrespect. A healthy distrust of authority, especially if you view with the police, with the interaction, it can go one of two ways. Either they let you off or they don't. Yeah. And you don't want to give them any evidence or fuel to detain you.
Yeah, true.
And so as long as you're respectful and you're just saying, no, please call my attorney. You're not allowed to search. I'm not making any further statements. Then that makes their job harder. Yeah. And everyone's human and gets frustrated, but they are still bound that they can't force you to do anything. Yeah. And so don't make it easy on them.
Okay.
In that aspect.
And we can also go the other way to where we know you've been drinking. We know you've been speeding. You gave a reason to get pulled over. Let's just focus on a minor 17 or 16, 17-year-old. Mm-hmm. How could a DUI, let's focus on DUI. How could that affect them, not just in the moment, but in their future?
So in the moment, let's say you get arrested for a DUI, you're going to go to jail. You're going to spend the night in jail until the bond settings. You hope that they get to you next morning. If not, you might have to wait till the following afternoon. Wow. And let's say, I want to say they do the bond settings at 4. Let's say you get arrested at 5. You're waiting the entire night and day. Wow. Just have your bond set. And so you can call a lawyer, you can call a bondsman, but you're just going to spend the night till you go in front of a judge. Wow. And that is an incredibly terrifying experience because you aren't segregated by your crimes. It's not just you and other traffic violators. So you will be in with people charged with murder, armed robbery, major drug crimes, which, you're 16, 17, that's a real wake up. Yeah.
You'd hope.
Yes. Yeah. And if you're that young, you'll be segregated and probably taken up to Columbia, which is an even longer disturbing process.
That's scaring me, just to hear you say that.
I know, I just thought of a baby doing this, but so then you get out, you're gonna need an attorney. Even if you think, oh, it's not that big of a deal, it's my first time, I have PTI available, I can do a live at 25. You have other diversionary programs, you don't want to burn it, and there are consequences, like you said. For instance, if you're popped for having drugs, marijuana, even marijuana, you can't get federal student loans.
Wow.
So you're a junior in high school and you're like, I'm going to go to college, and college is really expensive. And a lot of people need student loans to afford it. And if that is completely taken away as an option, it limits your choices and your ability to do more in the future.
Wow.
And so, a lot of times, especially if you're here and you don't have full citizenship, a conviction can really go against you in the immigration process. I don't do immigration law, but it does come up in the scope of criminal proceedings. If you are here illegally and you get arrested for something stupid, illegal switching a lane or no driver's license, you will then get flagged by ICE. And then not only will you have to go get the bond set on your state charge, but then you'll be transported to Charleston and have to have that hearing, have a separate bond hearing. You might be held and not let out. So you might get bond on the state level, but then you're held at the detention center, and just for a stupid
right. Something that could have, there was a choice and that could have been easily avoided.
100%.
With this, okay, so let's just say, they're not able to qualify for a, student loan. And many kids think, oh, well, I'm a minor. Once I turn 18, that record's going to be, washed away. Tell us about that. I just don't think like that's necessarily true, or maybe it's just depending on the crime.
It's not. I'm going to tell a story on my husband on this one. When he was 17, he was arrested for criminal mischief. And, he paid a fine. It was fine. This is before he knew me, and I put him on the straight and narrow. And we're in law school, and they're like, before you apply for the bar, you need to reveal every little bad thing you've ever done. If you had a bad thought at some point, it's like Catholic confession. They're like, you need to cleanse your soul. And so he's like, well, I had this thing, but I was a minor, and they actually were like, that is a honor code violation. And then every bar, we're licensed. We've been licensed and approved by 4 different bars. They do background checks. It always holds him up that he has this conviction from when he was 17, being a stupid kid, kicking down some barriers. And, and it's one of these things that you don't think about it. You're just being a goofball with your friends. And it follows you. And he's in his mid-40s, and it's something he still has to do.
Wow.
And the process of expungement costs money, and it takes a long time. And once you get into the system, it gets worse. To go back to our scenario with the DUI, once let's say you're convicted of the DUI, then it's enhanced if you get another one and another one and another one.
Wow.
Same with drug charges. It gets enhanced to the point where you're looking at some really serious time.
Wow. That's even school fights. Right now it's, well, and I think it's been like that for a while, but for some reason, maybe it's the fact that, I have a high school child, but fights at school or in public places, it seems like easy for them to just not think about their actions and just do. If they get, if they get called on the police for them, if there's a report filed, that also follows them.
100%. And, even if, let's say, the charges are dropped, but it's a fighting in school, you can get expelled. And then you're expelled from the entire county school system.
Wow.
And that's something that we do is we represent kids who are being kicked out of school for various reasons. And it's scary because once it starts, it's hard to get it back. And I mean, fighting itself is an incredibly dangerous thing to involve in, because you don't know what's going on with the other person's health. they might just fall and hit their head the wrong way, and suddenly you're looking at a much more serious charge than you would otherwise.
And how do you get that message across to them? Like I said, as parents, we try, but sometimes, they just don't realize the seriousness of their actions. As adults, we already know. We know better. We know what to do, what not to do, and when we do things, it's a choice. But with these, kids right now, these young kids right now, it's like, how do you make them understand the gravity of something like a fight, the consequences that it could, bring for you?
I think we, in our youth, also shared the same invincibility and y'all don't know what you're talking about. What I do, honestly, and another lawyer in town taught me this, is that he was like, if you see that lawyer's kid running in a party, you drop your beer and you run away too. Oh. And so what I like is the concept of choosing a responsible kid who your child's friends with, who has their head on straight, that will make the right decision and when pressure comes, and be like, you're doing exactly what that kid does. If he runs, you run. If he's yes or no, sir, you're yes or no, sir.
Yes.
And I think that's scary too, because you're a teenager, you ride around with your friends in the car, you're listening to music, and you all get hyped, and then you're pulled over. The driver might be really respectful, but then one of his bozo friends is in the back running his mouth. So I think that you need to talk with your kids about expectations of not only their behavior, but their friends' behavior. Yeah. You're in my car, you were driving, you were responsible for this, so you need to make sure your friends know not to do this.
Absolutely. And with that, I think if there's an advice, whether it be real estate or whether it's just, in this subject that you would like to leave us with, anything, to me, it's our youth. It's talking to our youth. It's what message, with everything that you have seen, which cannot be, very pleasant. What stands out to you the most, and something that you want to leave them with?
I think for both real estate and criminal, we joke that they don't make sense except we're married, but it does make sense, because my advice is the same, is an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So if you make plans to protect your assets, if you are prepared and you have a lender before you go look at houses and before you're in a contract, if you are like, I know I will do this if I get pulled over, I know I have been drinking, I should not drive. If you are able to do that, that will help you so much more than figuring out a way to solve it after it's happened.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you so much. And again, thank you for being here with us, for supporting the Hispanic Business Association and obviously this podcast. Hope, to have you again, and focus on a specific, topic. It's very interesting, all that you have to offer, and we can be here for hours.
Yes, we'd love to.
Yeah, so thank you. And the Bannon Law Group offices in Bluffton and in Savannah. And so you will have the information on how to reach them. And thank you for being here tonight. If you were not able to join us live on Facebook, you can always go to YouTube at Yo Soy the Boss, subscribe, share this episode with your friends, with your relatives, and we will see you next time. Thank you, Meredith.
Thank you.
Good night. Este episodio es presentado por The Bannon Law Group, LLC. Gracias por apoyar nuestra misión.